So my mom remarried about 2 years ago. My dad died when I was 12, so she had been widowed for over 10 years. This new relationship was very awkward with them meeting, dating, and getting married within 3 months. I don't know much about the guy, but my mom was happy, so I just tried to be supportive. She moved into his house in upstate Virginia and invited my fiance and I to spend a weekend in her new home, getting to know her new husband. My mom's new home was very isolated. It sat on a few hundred acres of lovely rolling hills and was very picturesque. I was nervous about getting to know this guy, but really trying to make the most of it. Over the course of our first day there though, I felt more and more uneasy. I didn't think it was weird, just silly. My mom's new husband was being very welcoming and friendly. We were being made to feel very at home, yet I still couldn't shake this oppressive feeling. I finally chalked it up to me being more upset about my mom getting remarried than I was willing to admit to myself. We spent most of the day wandering around outside since I felt worse when indoors. That night my fiance and I showered together. When I turned my back to him, he stopped talking mid-sentence and asked, "What did you do to your back?" "Well, nothing. Why?" "You have a large bruise." I hopped out to try and see it in the mirror. I got back in and we finished showering in silence. Then it was off to bed. The one window in our room looked out over a pitch black empty field, but I couldn't sleep until I hung something over the window. I felt sure that otherwise someone would watch us through the window. The next morning I had a complete meltdown. I woke up and just couldn't stop crying. I told my fiance we had to leave. He tried to calm me down by telling me all the things I had been telling myself. My feelings of anxiety were just a result of seeing my mom with someone. The longer I spent with them, the easier it would become. But I just had to leave. It was only Saturday morning and we were supposed to stay until Monday, but I felt completely hysterical. I knew I was on the verge of a panic attack and my only concrete thought was I had to stop crying long enough to make our excuse and get the hell out, which we did. As soon as we were on the road, I felt like a weight had been lifted. I was even feeling embarrassed for my behavior, hoping I hadn't insulted my mom's husband by leaving early. Then my fiance broke the silence. "That bruise on your back, did you get a good look at it?" I had. It looked like someone had touched the middle of my back with fingers spread wide, with their hand at a tilt. I want to make it completely clear, no one had touched my back the previous day, and especially not hard enough to bruise me. Cut to 3 weeks later, my mom comes to visit me. The entire time she's hounding me to come stay with her again. After finally trying to change the subject for the 5th time, I leveled with her. Before I even finished telling the story, her face is white as a sheet. She tells me she had been feeling the same way in the house. She hates it. She wants them to move as soon as possible. And the real kicker? Her new husband's previous wife shot and killed herself right outside in the same field our room window overlooked. I was guarding the HSBC building in downtown Vancouver on the afternoon shift. A call had just come in over the phone from the high-rise. A lawyer was possibly having a heart attack. I grabbed the AED and waited for paramedics before jumping into the elevator and heading up. When I got there, the lawyer, we'll call him Tom, was laying on the floor, clutching his chest and looking very ashen. His skin was clammy and he was breathing heavily and was complaining of agonizing chest pains. I shooed his co-workers away and stayed with him until the paramedics arrived. At this point, he seemed to be slipping in and out of consciousness, and I was readying the AED in case it was needed. Paramedics burst out of the elevator and began doing their thing. They had a much better defibrillator, of course, and I got the hell out of there and began taking down names and times. Tom was conscious again and was begging the paramedics to help him. He didn't want to die. He didn't have a will set up. He needed to call his ex-wife, etc. Suddenly, Tom looked up towards the ceiling, over the paramedic's shoulders. His face, already pale, whitened even further. He tried to scoot backwards on his butt, but the medics held him there, telling him to calm down. He paid them no attention, as if they weren't even there, and he screamed, "I don't fucking believe it, no, no!" And then he made a heavy sigh noise and flatlined. They weren't able to bring him back. We still never know just what he saw. It's been a few years. Now I work in a high-rise in downtown Vancouver, and a pretty new one at that. It was built where an old office tower used to stand, and now houses well-off residents. I was approached yesterday by a lady who seemed quite at the end of her rope. She had just moved her stuff in on Friday afternoon and complained of a woman who kept trying to get into her condo. The new resident was alone Friday night, trying to unpack her bedroom boxes, when the front door began banging in the frame. She called out, and it stopped. Later on that same night, this time close to midnight, her front doorknob began to rattle. She yelled again and called the night guard, but no one was found in the area. Saturday night, same thing, a rattling doorknob, door banging in the frame. So yesterday I went upstairs with a woman to check the area and her apartment area. Everything checked out. As I was leaving her suite, however, I almost ran headlong into an old gray-haired woman who was standing inches from the door. As any red-blooded Canadian would do, I jumped back like a scared little girl. The old woman stood her ground, looking between myself and their new resident. "Can I help you?" I asked, regaining my composure and straightening my tie. "No. I'm just waiting for the elevator." As if on cue, the elevator dinged and opened, and she got inside. I attempted to follow, but was too late, and the door slammed in my face. I asked a resident to come downstairs with me to review some CCTV footage. I honestly thought this was a family member of the previous owner, who still had her building pass card and was confused and lost her way. The new resident and I rewound the footage for the floor and sat back to watch. When it got to the part where I opened the door, it appeared I jumped back at nothing. The hallway was completely empty. This happened about 12 years ago. I was still living at home in high school. My parents purchased a condo from a family friend and we moved in. The lady we bought the condo from had passed away of natural causes inside the condo. She was an older lady, friendly from what I hear. She also dabbled in some sort of witchcraft or black magic. I don't believe she was casting evil spells on anyone, more of a hobby I suppose. So anyways, we move in, and most of our belongings were left behind, so my parents kept the stuff they needed, mostly furniture and coffee tables. After months of living there, we had a suspicion that we weren't alone. Now this wasn't your typical haunted house scenario. There were no flickering lights, strange noises, or lurking shadows that led us to this belief. It was twisty ties. Yes, just like the ones that come with the loaves of bread you buy from the store. Every now and then, we would find these strange twisty ties around the house. These random-ass twisty ties would seemingly appear out of thin air, almost strategically placed so that they would be noticed. Like I'd be hanging out on the couch watching TV, and go to the kitchen to fetch a tasty beverage, and come back to find a stray twisty tie just chilling on the coffee table. We find them wrapped around cords, on countertops, in desk drawers, even one time wrapped around my toothbrush. Each one is unique in the shape, color, and placement. It certainly wasn't a shit your pants moment, but over time living there, you start to look for it and anticipate it. There were 3 of us that lived there, and of course we all blamed each other, and of course none of us ever fessed up to it. Over the years, however, there were enough isolated instances each of us have had encountered to deny it. It was kind of fun actually. We named her the Twisty Tie Lady, and I started to collect them in my nightstand drawer just for funsies. But I always wondered, why twisty ties? I tried extensive research on the web about twisty ties, and if they had any significance in witchcraft, and found nothing. A few years later after moving out, I had learned that when the lady was alive, it became a little inside joke between her and her daughter to save all the twisty ties for future use. I guess that was her way of reaching out in the afterlife. Sadly, the condo complex had been wiped out from the flood, but to this day, every time I see a twisty tie, I smile.